We commonly assume that modern institutions like education and law naturally erase historical hierarchies, that feudalism and rigid castes are relics of a distant past. But step inside a modern university lunchroom, a setting defined by enlightened and progressive thought, and the illusion begins to break. In these spaces, highly educated professors still practice untouchability, refusing to eat from plates touched by their lower caste colleagues. This discrimination is rarely overt. Instead, upper caste individuals hide their prejudices behind polite excuses, claiming they have a sudden migraine or are strictly fasting to avoid sharing a meal. Breaking this dynamic often requires a confrontational intervention. In one instance, a senior official sat with his team and forced them to share food from the same bowl, using a simple meal to shatter an invisible social border. Advanced degrees in modern professional environments do not organically erase these social borders, suggesting a deeper, invisible machinery is keeping them alive. Historically, hierarchy functioned as a rigid division of human labor and worth, an inescapable system of patronage that defined every aspect of life. Consider the hereditary role of the barber, or nai. Their position granted them the exclusive right to deliver family invitations in exchange for systemic protection from the ruling class. The same roles bound the family of the washerwoman, or dobi. These labor duties were mandatory, trapping families in specific social strata for dozens of generations. This division even split the religious elite. While the privileged family priest held high status, the Joshi, relegated exclusively to funeral rites, was considered untouchable at the river gods. Survival in this architecture of control depended entirely on strictly adhering to one's assigned place in the patronage system. This hierarchy is powerful enough to force those entirely outside the system to adopt its rules. This includes marginalized Adivasi and tribal communities who originally lived without rigid castes or patriarchal structures. Through cultural imitation, these groups often adopt the practices of the elite, like demanding dowries or hiring specific priests, hoping to buy a measure of social respectability. In this way, hierarchy becomes a self-sustaining machine, as the oppressed are culturally coerced into mimicking their oppressors just to survive within the broader society. Maintaining these social divisions requires a concrete foundation, a monopoly on land, and the constant threat of physical violence. Feudal royal bloodlines acted as the primary enforcers of this order, using their status to command absolute obedience. Even religious traditions were co-opted for control. The concept of the quo.From, or family deity, was used to legitimize the hoarding of weapons and the protection of stolen land. Beneath social norms and cultural traditions lies a foundation of absolute historical violence. This foundation of violence remains visible today, as seen in a recent confrontation where a feudal uncle attempted to intimidate a younger relative with a firearm. The uncle assumed that modern education and a liberal lifestyle had made the younger generation weak and easily cowed by the threat of force. But the younger individual paralyzed the threat by weaponizing his own inherited privilege. As the recognized head of the family, he pulled rank, reminding his uncle that under their own feudal customs, he held the ultimate authority to use violence himself. This victory relied on a paradox. The younger man used the feudal system's ultimate authority, the word of the king, to neutralize violence rather than commit it. Neutralizing a single threat of violence leaves the underlying structure intact, as the machinery of hierarchy is powered by hoarded wealth. Dismantling that power required a material shift. The individual used the courts to legally transfer 7 acres of inherited, historically stolen land back to the Adivasi families it was taken from generations ago. Because the land was legally returned, the feudal family's ability to retaliate vanished. Without the material wealth to back it up, their arbitrary power over the community collapsed. Education and progressive dialogue provided the framework for change, but the hierarchy only actually broke once the material foundation was dissolved. In this instance, dismantling the past required the person holding the unearned authority to actively give back the assets that sustained the system.